Jai Hind friends, welcome to Kalyani IS Academy. In this lecture we will study respiratory system. Now start the lecture and understand what is respiratory system. See, respiration is most important for the survival of all living organisms because respiration is important to get the energy. Now you would say that all organisms get nutrients in the form of food to get the energy. But my dear students, you are wrong. At first, oxidation, right? Oxidation of digested food takes place at mitochondria, and in the process of oxidation of digested food, the energy is released in the form of energy. Therefore, respiration is important for the requirement for the fulfilling of requirement of energy, and without energy organisms cannot do any activity. Therefore, respiration is important because through respiration organisms get oxygen, and the oxidation of food particles takes place in the process of oxygen, right? Therefore, respiration is most important for all living organism, right? And respiration is defined as a metabolic process wherein the living cells of organism obtains energy in the form of ATP by taking in oxygen and liberating carbon dioxide from the oxidation complex, right? Oxidation of complex organic substances such as glucose, or we can say that C6H12 or O6, right? So I hope you would have understood the definition, right? And respiration is a metabolic process that occurs in all organisms, and this metabolic process is most important for the requirement of energy, right? So simply we can say that what is respiration? So simply we can say that respiration is defined as a metabolic process wherein the living cells of an organism obtains energy in the form of ATP by taking in oxygen and liberating carbon dioxide from the oxidation of complex organic substances such as carbohydrate or glucose C6H12O6, right? Second, respiration is a metabolic process that occurs in all organisms. Third, respiration is a biochemical process that occurs within the cells of organisms, or specifically, right? स्पेसिफिकली जो है सेलुलर रेस्पिरेशन जो है कहाँ पर होता है, माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया में होता है. देयरफॉर रेस्पिरेशन इज अ बायोकेमिकल प्रोसेस. In the process of respiration, the energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, right? In the process of respiration, the energy ATP, adenotriphosphate, is produced by the breakdown of glucose, which is further used by cells to perform various functions, right? So simply we can say that every living species from a single celled organisms to the dominant multicellular organisms performs respiration to fulfill the energetic requirement. Now we will study respiration in humans, right? You have studied about the respiration. What is respiration? See, respiration is defined as a metabolic process wherein the living cells of an human obtains energy in the form of ATP by taking in oxygen and liberating carbon dioxide from the oxidation of complex organic substances such as carbohydrate. Right? The most important part of the human respiratory system is the lungs, right? Lungs, where the exchange of gases takes place, hence it is also called pulmonary respiration, right? ये क्वेश्चन जो है कई बार एग्जाम्स में पूछा गया है, which type of respiration is found in humans. So pulmonary respiration is occurs in humans because this respiration takes place with the help of lungs. therefore this is known as pulmonary respirations. तो जैसे circulatory system का जो main organ heart था, in the same way lungs are the important organs of the respiratory system, right? So the most important part of the human respiratory system is are lungs, where the exchange of gases takes place, hence it is also known as pulmonary system. Now I would like to tell you about the respiratory system, right? So the different organs that perform the process, they are different organs of the human body that make the respiration process possible are collectively known as respiratory system. And the human respiratory system includes all those organs through which exchange of gases take place, such as nostrils, nasal passage, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchus, right, bronchi, bronchioles and lungs, right? And this is most important, from where many questions can be asked as a MCQs, and you have to remember what is the difference between bronchus, bronchi, bronchials, lungs, diaphragm, what is larynx, what is nostril, what is the use of nasal passage, right? So we have to study these organs, and we have to understand the respiratory process in depth, so that any MCQ if asked in the examination, you would be able to answer it. Now understand respiration in humans, right? So in the previous lecture I have drawn the diagram of lungs, and I had made you understand the circulation of blood in detail. In the same way, I would draw a diagram here so that you could understand what is the process of respiration, and you could come to know where is the particular organ is located in human body, right? So the first is nostrils, right? At first I would draw a diagram here so that you could understand here properly. Right? So this is nostril, right? Now as we will study, I will increase this diagram, right? This is the latest technology which I am owning. So this is the first organ, nostrils, right? Nostrils. Okay, nostrils, what are the nostrils? See, in humans, the nostrils are located just above the mouth, right? These are two nostrils. So, what are the nostrils? Nostrils are two circular external, right? There are two circular external nostrils which open into the nostril insides, right? Sorry, nasal passage, right? Nasal passage inside, right? Which opens into the nasal passage inside, and air, or we can say that oxygen, enters too. So there are two circulatory holes which are just above the mouth. उनको ही क्या कहा जाता है? Nostrils कहा जाता है, right? अब चलिए, तो यहाँ पर ये जो होल जो पाया जाता है उसको ही क्या कहा जाता है? Nostril कहा जाता है, right? So this is nostril. और ये क्या हो जाएगा? यहाँ पर nasal passage हो जाएगा. The second is nasal passage. Clear? So the first organ we have studied in human respiratory system, that is nostril, right? So in humans the nostrils are located just above the mouth, and there are two circular external nostrils. So there are two circular external nostrils which open into the nasal passage inside. And what is the function of these nostrils, right? The function is air, or we can say that oxygen, air or oxygen enters through these nostrils to the nasal passage. Second is nasal passage. The main function of the nasal passage is to smell, right? So the main function of the nasal passage is related to the smell, but it also acts as the gate of the respiratory tract. And there is a most important, see, when we इनहेल, और जब हम इनहेल करेंगे तो जो एयर है वो नोस्ट्रल से कहां पर जाएगी, नेसल पैसेज में जाएगी, एंड देयर इज पॉसिबिलिटी दैट मैनी टाइनी पार्टिकल्स मे बी प्रेजेंट इन दैट एयर जो कि हमारे लंग्स को डैमेज कर सकते हैं, राइट? और उन टाइनी पार्टिकल्स को रोकने के लिए ही नेसल पैसेज जो होती है, राइट? तो द मेन फंक्शन ऑफ द नेसल पैसेज इज रिलेटेड टू स्मेल, but it also acts as the gate of the respiratory tract, right? Its inner cavity is layered in mucous membrane, right? So its inner cavity is layered in mucus, right? So here the mucus is found. The inner layer of the nasal passage is here. This is mucus, right? So the inner layer of, clear? The inner cavity is layered in mucous membrane, and this mucous membrane secretes about half liter of the mucus daily. So this mucous membrane secretes about half liter of mucus daily, and this mucus prevents dust particles, bacteria and other microorganisms from entering the body, and this prevents from damaging the lungs of the human body. This is the most important function of the nasal passage, right? So the inner cavity is layered with the mucous membrane, and this mucous membrane secretes about half liter of the mucus daily, and this mucus prevents dust particles, bacteria and other tiny particles or microorganisms from entering the body. Also, second function, it makes the air entering in the body moist and equal to the temperature of the body, right? So it makes the air entering the body moist and equal to the body temperature, right? Now third is pharynx, right? Pharynx is located just behind the nasal passage, and it is where the trachea begins, right? So it is where from the trachea begins, right? So here is the third part, or that is, this is trachea, right? And the third part is, right, nostril, pharynx, right? Pharynx. So this is the pharynx, right? So we can say that the end part of the nasal passage is known as pharynx, and this is the portion from where trachea begins, right? So pharynx is located just behind the nasal passage, and this is where the trachea begins. Now, larynx or voice box. The part of trachea, right, the part of trachea that connects the pharynx to the trachea is known as larynx, right? So the part of trachea that connects the pharynx to the trachea is known as larynx, right? The main function of this larynx is the production of sound. So sound production है, साथ ही साथ at the entrance of the larynx, thin लीफ लाइक वाल्व इज नोन एज इपोग्लोटिस, और जो इपोग्लोटिस है ये ही क्या करता है, मेन इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है, राइट? आल्सो जो लैरिंग्स है, राइट, लैरिंग्स प्लेस एन इंपॉर्टेंट रोल, and this is the common organ of the digestive system as well as the respiratory system, right? So I would tell you through the diagram, right? Here is a larynx or voice box, right? This is larynx or voice box. See, the larynx is the portion of trachea that connects pharynx right, that connects pharynx to the trachea, right, and the main characteristics, the main function of the larynx is to produce sounds, but there is a epiglottis here, there is a epiglottis here, right, leaf like structure which is known as epiglottis, right, this is epiglottis, epiglottis. अब ये जो epiglottis होता है, this plays an important role in the digestion as well as the respiration, right? You have heard that our parents, right, our elders say that while eating the food we should not talk. Why? Because when we eat the food, we need to keep quiet, because while eating the food if we talk then there is the possibility that ये जो epiglottis है अगर ये open रहेगा तो यहीं से क्या होती है, यहीं से ओसोफेगस स्टार्ट होती है और यहीं से क्या स्टार्ट होती है, ट्रैकिया स्टार्ट होती है. अब अगर हम देखेंगे कि व्हेन वी स्वेल द फूड, राइट, और अगर ट्रैकिया ओपन होगा तो जो फूड पार्टिकल्स हैं वो कहाँ पर, हमारे स्टोमक में ना जाकर कहां पर पहुंच जाएगा, लंग्स में पहुंच जाएगा, और दिस में क्रिएट द प्रॉब्लम फॉर अस, राइट. और इसीलिए कई बार, राइट, व्हेन यू ईट द फूड एंड यू आर टॉकिंग, so when food particle would enter to your trachea then definitely, right, you will cough loudly and loudly, right. Therefore जो epiglottis है, right, when we swallow this epiglottis closes the trachea so that the food particle could enter to esophagus and the food particle goes to the stomach. When we breathe or when we inhale then this epiglottis closes this epiglottis opens the trachea and the air goes to the lungs. Clear? And this voice box produces sound here. Clear? So in this way we have understood larynx or voice box, right? So the part of trachea that connects the pharynx to the trachea is known as larynx. The main function of the larynx is to produce sound, but at the entrance to the larynx there is a thin leaf-like valve known as epiglottis, and when anything is swallowed, right, when anything is swallowed, epiglottis closes the trachea so that the food particle could not enter the trachea, and this food particle goes to the esophagus, to the stomach, right. And when we breathe in, right, when we breathe in or we inhale, right, this epiglottis opens the trachea so that air could enter the trachea and goes to the lungs. Next is trachea, right. The larynx is attached to the trachea. This trachea enters the thoracic cavity and this is 12 centimeter long tube. There are incomplete rings. Incomplete rings are found throughout its length to strengthen the thin wall of the trachea to prevent its ball from sticking. Right? The trachea enters the thoracic cavity downwards and divides in two parts which are known as bronchus. Right? So, as this is the diagram, right? This is the diagram here. Right? So this is trachea. Right? This is the trachea. अब जो ट्रैकिया है वो लैरिंक्स से स्टार्ट होकर लंग्स तक एक जो है लॉन्ग क्या होती है, लॉन्ग ट्यूब होती है, और ये जाकर फिर दो ब्रोंकस में क्या हो जाती है, ओपन हो जाती है. राइट? ये दो क्या हो जाएंगे, ब्रोंकस हो जाएंगे. राइट? तो दिस इज trachea, right, or these are the bronchus. Now lungs. Right, these are the lungs. तो ये क्या हो जाएगी यहाँ पर, नेक्स्ट हमारा जो ऑर्गन हो जाएगा वो क्या हो जाएगा, ब्रोंकस हो जाएगा, राइट। दिस इज द फिफ्थ ट्रैकिया, सिक्स्थ हो जाएगा यहाँ पर ब्रोंकस। Bronchus. Clear? So we have studied about trachea, right? The larynx is attached to the trachea and this trachea enters the thoracic cavity, या जिसको हम हिंदी में छाती भी कहते हैं. The length of trachea is 12 centimeter. You have to keep in your mind this fact for the MCQ's purpose, right? So what is the length of trachea? The length of trachea is 12 centimeter. Also, incomplete rings are found throughout the lens to strengthen the thin wall of the trachea and to prevent its wall from sticking. The trachea enters thoracic cavity downwards and divides into two parts. These are known as bronchus. Right? Now, bronchus. So, as we know that the bronchus on both sides enter both the lungs. Or we can say that when trachea is divided into, right, when trachea is divided into two parts, these are known as bronchus, right. तो जो trachea है वो thoracic cavity में enter करती है and later this, right, later the trachea enters the thoracic cavity downwards and divides into two parts which are known as bronchus, right. Later these bronchus on both sides enters both the lungs. The right side bronchus enters the right lung and the left side bronchus enter to the left lung. The right side bronchus enters the right lung, divides into three parts, while the left side of bronchus divides into two parts after entering the left lung, right. These part of the bronchus are known as bronchi, right. So this is the diagram, right. Here ये क्या हो जाएगा, ये यहां पर this is the right lung, right. This is the right lung and this is the left lung, right. So here when जो bronchus है, right, this the right bronchus enters to the right lung and the left bronchus left lung, right. So right bronchus enter to the right lung, left bronchus enter to the left lung, right. This right bronchus is divided into three, right, three bronchi, right. How many? Three bronchi, right. Therefore right lung is larger than left lung. ये जो है MCQs के लिए मैं आपको आगे बताता, अभी मैं बता दे रहा हूँ, right. The right lung is larger than left lung because, right, because the right lung has three bronchi and the left lung has two bronchi, right. So these are the three bronchis, these are the two bronchis, right. So when trachea enters to the thoracic cavity, when this trachea enters to the thoracic cavity downwards, it divides in two parts which is known as bronchus. Later this bronchus, right, when the bronchus enters to the bronchus, both the parts of the bronchus enter to the lungs, right. The right bronchus enter to the right lung, the left bronchus enter to the left lung. The right bronchus is divided in three parts known as three bronchi and the left bronchus is divided in two parts known as two bronchus, right. Sorry, two bronchi. तो ये कितनी हो जाएंगी, two bronchi हो जाएंगे, right, two bronchi हो जाएंगे. चलिए, तो two bronchis हो जाएंगी. These bronchi further divided into thin branches which are called bronchioles. तो ये किस में डिवाइड हो जाती हैं, bronchioles में डिवाइड हो जाती हैं. In the same way, if I draw a diagram here, is in this way. ये इस तरीके से क्या हो जाती हैं, डिवाइड हो जाती हैं किसमें, ब्रोंकियोल्स में। तो ये यहाँ पर कौन सी यूनिट हो जाएंगी, दीज आर नोन एज ब्रोंकियोल्स, ब्रोंकियोल्स, राइट, ये हो जाएगी यहाँ पर ब्रोंकियोल्स, ठीक है। और ब्रोंकियोल्स के ऊपर ये जो टाइनी पार्टिकल्स पाए जाते हैं इसको ही क्या बोला जाता है, एल्यूवोली बोला जाता है, राइट, एल्वियोली बोला जाता है। क्लियर? सो नाउ अंडरस्टैंड एल्वियोली, राइट, एल्वियोली। तो एल्वियोली ये यहां पर हो जाएंगी, ये ठीक है, ये जो स्मार्ट पार्टिकल है यहां पर, ठीक है। चलिए नेक्स्ट इज, राइट, नेक्स्ट इज एल्वियोली। क्लियर? सो वी वर स्टडिंग ब्रोंकस, राइट। तो when the trachea enters the thoracic cavity downwards, it is divided in two parts which are known as bronchus, right. These bronchus on both sides enter the both lungs, right. The right side bronchus enters the right lung and divides into three parts, and the left side bronchus divides into two parts after entering the left lung. These parts of the bronchus are known as bronchi. These bronchi further divided into thin branches which are known as bronchioles, right. Bronchioles की जो यूनिट होती है वो क्या होती है, एल्वियोली होती है। तो स्मॉल grape like structures are found at the ends of bronchioles which are called alveoli, right. So small grapes like structures are found at the ends of the bronchioles which are known as alveoli. There are about 300 million alveoli in each lung, and alveoli is the structural and functional unit of the lung, and this question have been asked in many examinations, and you have to keep in the mind for the upcoming MCQs as well, right. So the small grapes like structure are found at the end of the bronchioles which are known as alveoli, right. There are 300 million alveoli in each lung of the human body, right. The alveoli is the structural and functional unit of the lungs. The exchange of, right, the exchange of gases through the respiratory membrane between the O2 present in the air taken from the outside in the alveoli and O2 present of the alveoli is known as gas exchange. तो gases का exchange कैसे होता है, देखिए, the exchange of gases through respiratory membrane, तो जो रेस्पिरेटरी मेम्ब्रेन होती है उसी से गैस का क्या होता है, एक्सचेंज होता है, राइट. O2 present in the air taken from the outside in the alveoli, तो alveoli में क्या होती है, ऑक्सीजन होती है, और alveoli की जो अपर साइड होती है उस पर CO2 प्रेजेंट होती है, तो CO2 प्रेजेंट above the alveoli, तो CO2 प्रेजेंट above the alveoli is absorbed, and जो alveoli में ऑक्सीजन होती है उसको ब्लड के साथ में मिलाया जाता है, दिस इज नोन एज गैस एक्सचेंज. नाउ द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट ऑर्गन, लंग्स, राइट. ब्रेन, हार्ट, लंग्स, किडनी, right, these are the most important organs of the human body. Now study about lung. There is a pair of lungs in the human thoracic cavity. Pair means, right, there are two lungs, right. So there is a pair of lungs in the human thoracic cavity. Their color is red and their composition is similar to that of a sponge, right. So there are a pair of lungs, or there are two lungs in thoracic cavity. Their color is red और उनका structure sponge के समान होता है. The shape of lung is conical. The right lung is larger. Why? I have told you the right lung is larger than the left lung because the bronchus is divided in 3 bronchi in right lung. Therefore, right lung is larger than the then the left lung. Each lung is surrounded by a membrane known as pleural membrane. There is a network of blood cells in the lungs where oxygen goes and CO2 comes out. Right? Next is diaphragm. Right? What is diaphragm? Here. This is diaphragm. This is the 10th organ, right? And this is lungs, 11th organ, right? So now study about diaphragm, right? So diaphragm, the lower part of the thoracic cavity is closed by a band-like structure which is known as diaphragm, right? It acts as division between the thoracic cavity and abdomen. It plays an important role in exhalation and breathing, right? तो ये breathing में important role play करता है, right? So diaphragm, the lower part of the thoracic cavity is closed by a band-like structure. This is known as diaphragm, right? And it acts the division between thoracic cavity and abdomen, right? It plays an important role in the exhalation during the breathing, right? So in this way we have studied the process of respiration in human body, right? Again, I would like to tell you the whole process so that you could understand and you could revise this topic, right? The first thing is that respiration is important in the human beings to get the energy, because through the respiration oxygen is obtained to the cells of the human body, right? And in the presence of oxidation of food takes place and energy is released in the form of ATP. Therefore respiration is important for human beings, right? There are certain organs which are involved. There are certain organs which are involved in the respiration, right? Respiration, and these organs collectively known as respiratory system. The organs are nostrils, the nasal passage, then pharynx, then larynx, then trachea. After that bronchus, then bronchi, then bronchioles, then alveoli, right? Then lungs, then diaphragm. First is nostrils. What is nostrils? So there are two circular external nostrils which are found above the mouth, right? And the oxygen enters through the nostrils. So this is the oxygen, right? Oxygen or air enters through these nostrils, and this nostril ends in the nasal passage inside. Second is nasal passage. See, the main function of nasal passage is to smell, but it plays an important role in the process of respiration as well, because in the inner layer, right, in the inner layer of this nasal passage, mucous membrane is found, the yellow color. This mucous membrane is found, and from this mucous membrane, half liter per day mucus is secreted, right? And this mucus prevents the dust particles, smallest particles, tiny particles, right, bacteria and harmful organisms to enter to the lungs. And second thing is that this mucus is important for the equaling temperature of the entering air to the lungs. Now third is pharynx, right? So pharynx is located just below the nasal passage, right? Just below the nasal passage, right? And from where the trachea starts. Fourth, larynx. Larynx or voice box. Larynx or voice box is the organ of respiratory system which connects pharynx to trachea. Right. Second thing is that the important function of the larynx or voice box is to produce sound. But at the entrance of this larynx, a leaf-like structure is found. This is known as epiglottis. Right. Epiglottis. Right. This epiglottis plays important role in the respiration. Right. while eating food, right, while eating food, this epiglottis, this epiglottis this epiglottis closes the trachea so that food particle could not enter the trachea and could not reach the lungs, right? Therefore, larynx or voice box or epiglottis is important. Next, trachea, right? Trachea starts from the larynx, right, and it reaches to the thoracic cavity, right? इनमें इनर इनकम्प्लीट सर्कल्स पाई जाती हैं ताकि ये जो ट्रैकिया है ये चिपके ना. The trachea enters the downward and divides into two parts known as bronchus, right? So the trachea enters to the thoracic cavity and divides into two parts, right? So this is air, right? So this is air. So the trachea is divided in two parts known as bronchus. The bronchus enters to the each lung. The right bronchus enters to the right lung and divided in three parts known as bronchi. The left bronchus reaches to left lung and divided in two bronchi, right? Later these bronchis are divided in many small branches known as bronchioles. So these are bronchioles, right? So these are bronchioles. Clear? At the end of these bronchioles there is a grapes-like structure, right? A grape-like structure is found at the end of these bronchioles, which is known as alveoli, right? Alveoli, right? So these alveoli. So there is a grape-like structure which is found at the end of bronchioles, which is known as alveoli, right? There are 300 million alveoli in each lung of the human body, right? And these alveoli, right? These alveoles are the structural and functional unit of the lungs. Clear? And यहाँ पर जो alveoli है वो gases के exchange में भी important role play करती हैं. Clear? After that we would study the lungs, right? So there is a pair of lungs, or there are two lungs in the thoracic cavity of the human body, right? The right lung is larger than the left lung, right? So the right lung is larger than the left lung because in right lung the bronchus is divided into three bronchi. Clear? और जो lungs is the important, lungs plays an important role in the respiration. Therefore human respiration is also known as pulmonary respiration. Clear? The last organ which is known as diaphragm, right? Diaphragm. So just below the lungs, right? Just below the lung, at the end of thoracic cavity, just below the lung, at the end of thoracic cavity, there is a band-like structure which is known as diaphragm. And diaphragm divides the thoracic cavity to the abdomen cavity. And this diaphragm plays an important role in exhaling, right? Exhaling in the respiratory process, right? So in this way, I have revised this topic again, right? If you will observe this diagram very closely, and if you would revise this topic, then definitely every question or every MCQs which would be asked from this topic, you would be able to solve that question easily, right? So in this way we have studied the respiratory system and respiration process in human beings. Now we will meet in next lecture. Till then, thank you.